afternoon, everyone. Welcome to committee. House taxation will now come to order, please. First item of business, as always, would be bill introductions, and I'd like to recognize Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce RS number 0172, and that is a property tax bill that we had last year that passed through the House and got caught up in the shortened session. Pretty simple. It just, they're always, I shouldn't have even said that. It's doomed. What it does, when you have a tax increase, if it's a $500 increase in the tax bill on your house, they have to escrow the increase. And if it's $5,000 increase on your commercial property, they escrow the increase until it's resolved.
Okay. Committee, any questions? Representative Baker, is that an increase on the total bill, or is it a per entity, per taxing district? Is it the total?
Total bill, yes.
Total bill, okay.
And you understand the reason?
Yes.
And the threshold is high enough that the appraisers and everybody said it shouldn't affect. It'll have to be a pretty draconian, unique situation before it impacts it. But I think with the people who I've had contact me at the different industries, we may be headed there. So trying to get these resolved will be very important. Thank you.
Very good. Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, any objection to the introduction? Seeing none, thank you, Representative. Committee, any further bill introductions? Seeing none, we will conclude that portion of our meeting and move on to our hearing today. We are hearing committee, House Bill 2091. For an overview, I would turn to our lead advisor, Adam Sievers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2091 creates a new refundable food sales tax credit, and it also discontinues the existing food sales tax credit, which is non-refundable. As stated, Section 1 would create this new refundable food sales tax credit. The credit would commence in the current tax year 2021. For eligible participants, they would have to purchase food in the state, have a federal AGI less than $30,000 for single filers, or $40,000 for married or head of household filers. The individuals would have to be domiciled in the state, which would not include inmates of the correctional institutions. The credit amount would be in $60 for single filers, $180 for head of household, and $240 for married filers. And this credit is fully refundable. And the income thresholds and the amount of credit will be subject to a cost of living adjustment going forward. Section 2 of the bill would discontinue the current food sales tax credit. It would no longer apply starting in tax year 2021. The credit is currently available, but will be discontinued. Impacts those individuals with a federal AGI of less than or equal to $30,615. And also such person has a disability, is 55 years of age or older, or has a dependent under the age of 18 years of age. The credit is $125 for each exemption. And as I stated, the credit is non-refundable. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Would you briefly explain the basic difference between a refundable and a non-refundable tax credit? Sure.
Sometimes I speak a little quickly. Refundable, easiest sense is it doesn't matter if you have zero or if you have no tax liability, the state will issue a check for the amount above your tax liability. So if you have, if you don't have any tax liability, the state will come back and just write you a check above for whatever that amount is. That's what refundable means. Non-refundable means you have to have tax liability up to that amount to be able to use the credit. So if the credit is for $125, for non-refundable credit, you would have to have tax liability of at least $125 for that credit to have any effect on your ultimate tax liability or, reimbursement for the credit usage.
Thank you. We also have a question from Representative Corbett.
Thank you. One of the questions I have for you is on food items. Are you using the same guidelines as with SNAP, the USDA, what they consider food?
Representative Credit, while it correlates with food, it really is just a reimbursement for an approximate amount of food sales tax the individual would pay. So it really has there really is no correlation between food bought or anything like that. It's just a credit amount that each person would be entitled to depending on their, qualifications underneath the credit. There's no real link to the actual food purchase or definitions of food.
Committee, any further questions for the reviser? Representative Abercamp.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Sieber, can you just take a quick example of the I know I can look up the tax brackets for Kansas real quick, but can you just walk through a case scenario for somebody in the married filing or better yet, $40,000 head of household filing status? What are the taxes they would owe to the state? What's their total tax bill? And just to know the percentage of that tax bill that this credit would take away.
Unfortunately, Representative, that's something I just don't have the details worked out in my head, or it starts with the bill itself starts with federal AGI of less than $30,000. When we start with our determining Kansas tax liability, we pull in the federal AGI and then go off that with modifications and things like that. So to some extent, it would be difficult to determine their ultimate tax liability, because the starting point for this credit would just be what their federal AGI is, without any contemplation of subsequent Kansas income tax subtraction or addition modifications. Revenue or your research may be able to provide more guidance on some sort of a case study or something like that, but I just don't have any of that information on me.
Eddie, would you like to offer any, or do you have any insight onto that information?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. We can put together a couple of hypothetical taxpayers, but unfortunately we can't do that in real time. But I will put together a couple of those for the representative and get those, once he's seen them, get them to the full committee as well.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any further questions for the reviser? Seeing none, Adam, thank you. Oh, Representative Corbett for another question.
This may not be for today. As you know, Kansas is one of the highest states for sales tax on food. Would there be any way to get a number or a cost just to eliminate sales tax on food in Kansas? Just eventually, I've got people who'd like to know that.
Eddie, do you have that number off the top of your head? I was thinking it was about 320 million.
I'm gonna try to pull it up out of an email that I believe I have from a few weeks ago. But don't hold the meeting for me, because this might take a couple of minutes.
Right, I understand, and we might have a speaker from Department of Revenue coming up next that would be able to answer that as well. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Part of the problem on getting that number is each community has a different number for sales tax. Some of the rural counties I know in certain districts go up to 10%. So trying to figure out exactly what that number is kind of, it depends on where you live and what the sales tax rate is. So that, yeah, but 320 to 360 million, that's kind of the number we've heard in the past.
Okay, committee, any further questions? Seeing none, we will move on to Department of Revenue for an overview of the fiscal note.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. The fiscal note for House Bill 2091, the Department of Revenue is estimating that House Bill 2091 would decrease state general state general fund revenues by $53.9 million in fiscal year 22, $55.5 million in fiscal year 23, and $57.2 million in fiscal year 24. And this does take into account the end of the non-refundable credit that we have on the books at this point. We're estimating that more than 540,000 individuals will be able to qualify for this refundable credit that we have in front of you right now. With that, I would stand for questions.
Thank you, Kathleen. And so if I'm looking at the fiscal note correctly, what you just read, 540,000 returns, $63.9 million. So there's roughly $10 million that is utilized right now through the non-refundable.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Committee, any questions for Department of Revenue on the fiscal note? Kathleen, do you have any numbers on roughly what food sales tax is in Kansas statewide?
I do. I don't have that in front of me, but I would be more than happy to provide that to the committee. Unless Eddie can find it real quick.
I'm sure you can by the end of the meeting, but we will, if not, we'll address that at another meeting or get that distributed to the committee.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I actually have an email from the Department of Revenue with that from, it's been about a month ago since this email came through, but I doubt there's been much, if any, change from then. For a January 1 of 2022 start date exempting food sales tax, that results in a state general fund reduction of $150 million in FY22, $363.75 million in FY23, and $367.39 million in FY24. Now, there is also a state highway fund impact to that, and that would be $28.9 million in FY22, $70.8 million in FY23, and $70.78 million in FY24. And then in addition to those numbers, as Representative Baker pointed out, there would be an impact on the local sales tax collections. I do not have an estimate on local sales tax right in front of me, though.
Thank you, Eddie. We appreciate that. Any further questions? Representative Baker?
Thank you for one more question. While we're looking up all these numbers, could we have the number of sales tax dollars collected on grocery coupons? I think we had that number in the past, and it was like 43 million. And most people don't realize when you use a coupon, you still pay tax on it. So we're going to deal with that with automobiles too in the weeks ahead, but just an interesting number. Thank you.
We will definitely get that. Unlike the other one, I don't happen to have an email with that one handy from the last few weeks, so I can't provide that one today. Unless Kathleen may have it right in front of her, but otherwise I don't have it today. I don't think you can see it in the room, but Kathleen is shaking her head no on the different view of the WebEx call. So we'll get that number back to the committee, though.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Kathleen. Any further questions, committee? Seeing none, we will move on to our proponent testimony. Our first proponent will be appearing via WebEx virtually. Emily Fetch, welcome to committee. Emily is with the Kansas Action for Children. Can you hear us, Emily?
I can. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Smith and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to share our support of reinstating the refundability of the food sales tax credits. I'm Emily Fetch, the Director of Fiscal Policy at Kansas Action for Children. Kansas Action for Children works to improve the health, education, and financial outcomes for young children and the adults who care for them, especially those experiencing poverty. And as was already mentioned in your committee, we know that the Kansas food sales tax rate is too high. Kansas has the second highest food sales tax rate in the United States, and it's one of only 7 states to fully tax the sale of groceries. And we also know that the high food sales tax disproportionately hurts the budgets of low-income Kansans. We also know that the state has many needs, and it is intentional and targeted policies that are the best solution for our current times. KAC supports House Bill 2091 because it is such a targeted policy solution to help Kansas families who need it the most to put food on the table. Kansas used to have a refundable food sales tax credit, which was removed as a tool to help working families in 2012, made effective in 2013. And this change made the food sales tax credit non-refundable, which significantly curtailed eligibility and led to dramatic decreases in those who stood to benefit. In my written testimony, you can see the change between beneficiaries before the refundability was removed and the number of current beneficiaries, which are much lower in number. When the credit was refundable, filers whose credit amount exceeded their tax liability were able to receive the difference. Non-refundable credits are less helpful for low-income earners who do not have high levels of tax liability to benefit from the credit, but who are also the ones who need it the most. We urge your committee to consider reinstating the refundability of the credit, which would alleviate the impact of Kansas's high food sales tax for low-income Kansans, again, the Kansans that are most likely to have trouble keeping food on the table. Kansas Action for Children supports fiscally responsible strategies for helping low and middle income Kansans make ends meet. And at this time, as we face economic challenges, we encourage policymakers to consider this bill, House Bill 2091, as it is a targeted policy solution to help working families, as well as fixed income seniors in our state. And with that, I'm happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Since we just have a few conferees today, I would like to take questions after each conferee. So are there any questions? Seeing none in the room and none virtually, you must have done a great job. There's no questions. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Our next proponent testimony will also be appearing via WebEx virtually, and I'd like to welcome to committee Sister Therese Bangert. She is a sister of Charity of Leavenworth.
Just took me a moment to find the unmute on this.
That's great. We can hear you loud and clear. Welcome to committee.
Good afternoon, Chairman Smith and committee. I want to acknowledge the new legislators. Welcome to your information, listening, and reading marathon. You may want to be friends with Representative Kessler. I noticed that his business is wine and spirits. So I'm Sister Therese Bangert. Because I have walked the halls of the Kansas Capitol for 34 years, I tend to do video memories of policies as they appear again in the process. The issue of the unreasonably high food sales tax in our state has been continuously raised. It has been raised by Republicans and Democrats. It has not been a partisan issue. One way to deal with this high tax on food was to add a refundable food sales tax credit to the 1998 tax bill that was signed by Governor Bill Graves. This bill was touted as having something in it for everyone and acknowledged the disparity in tax burden for Kansans with low incomes. I also watched the sales tax be increased several times. In 2009, the state of Kansas needed to have more revenue, and the sales tax was deemed by the governor and the legislators to be the most acceptable tax to increase, the one that would get enough votes to pass. That was Governor Parkinson. Sales tax was increased 2 times during the Brownback administration. So here we are in 2021, and this committee has put forth this refundable credit bill to again acknowledge that the people of low income pay a greater percentage of their income in taxes. This is also a time in our nation when I suspect all of you have seen the unbelievable line of cars waiting to receive food. These food lines are not foreign in Kansas. I suspect each of you know of the looming hunger in your own communities. These pictures of miles of waiting cars tell the story without words that the stock market, which has in past months broken records and then broken records again, this stock market is not the economy. The economy has left millions of people, including Kansas, scrambling to feed their families. So why not just get rid of the food tax altogether? Well, I would note that like many of you, I am not a fan of the food sales tax. However, drastically reducing it or eliminating it does not make common sense as we face the many needs of Kansans, the needs of infrastructure, and the need to pay off previous debts. I do not advocate this eliminating it without an offset of a policy that would replace the revenue from the food sales tax. In the past, I've heard some legislators question what difference this small credit makes. I know from experience with free tax preparation sites like VITA that people would come and wait 5 to 7 hours to have someone help them fill out the form to receive their credit. This credit does make a difference. It is welcomed. As we celebrate the birthday of Kansas tomorrow, founded in 1861, I share with you that our Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth came to this state 3 years earlier, 1858. As Sisters of Charity, our mission is to put our hands and hearts to the task of walking with people in poverty and changing the systems that contribute to poverty. I want to share a story as I end. A couple years ago, I arrived at the Capitol in those good old days when I felt safe coming to the Capitol. I arrived at the Capitol and went to my favorite room when getting off the turnpike, the Visitors Center bathroom. While in that bathroom, I was joined by a group of energetic third grade girls. Suddenly, from their excited chatter came oohs and ahs, then exclamations. This is so beautiful. This bathroom is as big as my house. They started that day for me with energy from their energy, but also with a reminder of how accustomed I can get to the abundance that is in my life. For me, this food sales tax credit is a way that this legislative body can say to Kansans who do not live in abundance, we care about you and we want tax policy to be more equitable. Thank you for hearing me. Thank you for setting up this virtual way to be heard. Peace be with you, and you have my prayers as you make important decisions that impact the lives of people in Kansas. Please support House Bill 2091. And I would ask for questions.
Yes, thank you. Committee, any questions? Once again, excellent job. There are no questions. Thank you so much for your testimony, and thank you for your time. Committee, next up, we have Rabbi Moti Reber, also via WebEx with Kansas Interfaith Action.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Rabbi Moti Reber. I'm the executive director of Kansas Interfaith Action. We are a statewide multi-faith issue advocacy organization that works on behalf of people of faith and the public in support of critical social and economic justice issues. And I am testifying today in support of HB 2091. A key public policy concern of the faith community is poverty and hunger. I don't need to go into the many dozens of biblical quotes that regard the necessity of caring for the poor. But this issue goes to the core of how we see ourselves, how we see our call as people of faith. Responsibility to serve those in need through charity, yes, but also through alleviating the burdens that are put on people in need through public policy. I can give you many quotations from the denominations that go to make up Kansas Interfaith Action, but I'll give you the one quote from the United Methodist Church's social principles. Quote, is it especially important that the causes of hunger are intricately related to the problems of poverty and greed? Hunger cannot be dissociated from people and systems that keep people in poverty. Sister Teresa talked about this quite a bit, but I'll just say that before the pandemic, 368,000 people in Kansas were struggling with hunger, 129,000 of them children. 1 in 8 people in Kansas struggle with hunger. For children, the number is 1 in 5. That's before the pandemic. In the past year, thousands of Kansans have experienced economic crisis through the pandemic and recession, including job loss, housing insecurity, and food insecurity. In the last quarter of 2020, 17% of Kansas families said they had had some period of food insecurity. As has been noted before, we've over the past 10 years, we've skewed our Kansas here has skewed our tax system to put more of the burden on lower income people who pay a significantly higher percentage of their income in taxes than higher income people do. A big part of that was the end of the refundability of the food sales tax in 2012, 2013. Kansas has, as has also been noted, Kansas has amongst the second highest food sales tax in the nation, and is one of the few states that counts food fully along with luxury items. It's perhaps a bitter irony that the food sales tax makes lower income Kansans more food insecure. So until 2012, we had the refundability of the food sales tax, which was eliminated to help to fill a budget hole caused by ill-advised tax cuts for well-off people. We believe it's time to begin to address that imbalance by reestablishing the refundability of the food sales tax credit. One of the chief tools that a state government has available to it to alleviate the burden of poverty and near poverty is immediate assistance, immediate cash assistance such as SNAP and the Earned Income, and TANF and the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a tax policy. With this bill, we would add the refundability of the food sales tax to this list. It would have the effect of helping people through difficult times. It'll help address the imbalance, the injustice in Kansas's tax system, and most importantly, it would help Kansans, working Kansans, and lower income Kansas keep and put food on the table. The faith community urges you to support HB 2091. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, committee. Any questions? See none in the room and none online. Thank you for your testimony and thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Committee, next proponent we have is Haley Kotler with the Kansas Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. She will be joining us via WebEx. Haley, can you hear us?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Smith and members of the House Committee on Taxation. My name is Haley Kotler. I am a campaign director at Kansas Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to the belief that Kansans working together can build a state full of thriving, inclusive, and just communities. Kansas Appleseed supports HB 2091. The refundable food sales tax credit proposed in this bill is a targeted measure that will help Kansans with low incomes purchase the food they need. Addressing hunger in Kansas is more essential now than ever as food insecurity has grown in the wake of COVID-19, as others have mentioned. The refundable tax credit is a smart policy option for implementing that assistance for those who need it. Before the pandemic, around 370,000 Kansans struggled with food insecurity, and these numbers have skyrocketed due to the pandemic, with about 1 in 6 Kansans who are food insecure. And that number is even higher among Kansas children, 1 in 4 Kansas kids facing food insecurity. I'll just say that again, 1 in 6 Kansans and 1 in 4 Kansas children who are currently food insecure. In the breadbasket of our nation, no one should be going hungry. Current food assistance is helping, but it's still not enough. The number of Kansas SNAP recipients has gone down each month since June 2020, even as many are saying the need is greater than ever. Because of severe restrictions on food assistance that were passed in 2015 and 2016 as part of the HOPE Act, many Kansans who need food assistance are not receiving it. The refundable food sales tax will not fix this problem, but it will help fill the gap. Removing barriers and doing all that we can for our hungry neighbors is necessary for all Kansans to thrive and create a hopeful future for themselves and their families. And finally, the return of a refundable food sales tax credit, as proposed in this bill, is a smart policy solution that will help low-income Kansans directly while also benefiting the Kansas economy as a whole. And for these reasons, Kansas Appleseed urges support for HB 2091. Thank you, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Haley. Committee, any questions? If none, I do have one question. I just want to know your definition. What is the threshold, or what is defined as food insecurity? I know you quoted some numbers, 1 in 5, 1 in 4, or 1 in 4 is what you quoted. The previous conferee quoted a 1 in 5. Is there some discrepancy in the definition there?
So 1 in 5 Kansas children were facing food insecurity before the pandemic. And as of 2020, 1 in 4 Kansas children are facing food insecurity. There's a number of different ways that we can define food insecurity, but the most is that it's within like a given week, someone is saying that they have not been able to put food on the table, or they've been worrying about putting food on the table, if that makes sense.
Okay, yes, thank you. Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony and thank you for your time today. Committee, I need to recognize one more individual we have as a proponent testimony. You do not have information in your packet. I apologize, there was a communication error, but we have Haley Roberson from the city of Oberlin, and that is Oberlin, not Overland, as in park, but we want to welcome her to committee. We will get her testimony to you shortly this evening once that's supplied, and she's driven a long way, so we want to give her a chance to go ahead and come up to the podium and testify for the committee. Welcome to committee. There should be a button and a blue light.
I've got a blue light. Can
there you
hear
go.
Me? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee, for having me here today. Yes, there was a communication error because I drove here from Oberlin, so I should have been virtual. That would have been okay. Had a lot of snow, but we're glad to have the moisture. And I do want to thank the committee for all of your work on this. I know I got to come before the committee probably 2 years ago and share some testimony from myself. Like the chairman had introduced me, my name is Haley Roberson, and I'm the city administrator for a rural community in northwestern Kansas. And with this, one of the big important things to us is our grocery store. We have one grocery store in our entire county. And I shared testimony last time I was here from that grocery store owner. He's recently passed away, unfortunately, and so it leaves our community in kind of a precarious situation where the family is looking to actually sell that store. But with the high food tax that we have, it makes that business less and less viable for investors, and it leaves our community in really kind of a difficult situation. I'd also like to echo the comments that the sister made. In government, we're really in a difficult spot where we've got failing infrastructures and a lot of demands on us. And so at a time where people are wanting taxes cut, it makes it all the more difficult. My concern with this bill really comes from the community that I serve. And we have a high elderly population, and we have approximately 50% people in poverty. And a reduction on food tax is going to do them a lot more good at the cash register than it is on, when they file their taxes at one time at the end of the year. I don't even pretend to know the amount of work that this committee has put into this bill or the staff supporting you with the information. And I'm just like, if it's going to cost the state the money, are we going to get the benefit to the individuals? The intent of this committee is to have a benefit to the citizens of Kansas. And the ones that are struggling, I feel, would be better served if they got the benefit at the cash register, as opposed to having to wait and get a partial benefit, maybe if they qualify on a rebate, that if they hit these certain criteria. And so that was really my concern, and I wanted to just share kind of what our community's up against. We're a border community, so people are a 20-minute drive from Nebraska, where there is no food sales tax. And it just leaves our community constantly. It's a big gamble for me personally as a city administrator, because our grocery store is our biggest tax revenue source that we have. But the thought is that if food is reduced, that it might keep those shoppers in town more than instead of driving the 20 minutes to Nebraska to not have to pay tax on their food. And then hopefully we get the tax revenue from all the other things that we buy when we go grocery shopping. The things that you buy that were never on the list, and and then you end up forgetting why you went there in the first place. So that was really what I wanted to share with the committee, is if the state's going to take the hit anyway, is there a way to give a benefit at the cash register? Because our folks that are living in the 50% poverty, that's where they would really get it. And I don't know if this committee, but I'm sure everyone who serves here, I just want to say thank you so much for all of the effort on Spark funding and all of the effort on CARES funding. I can tell you when that money got on the ground, it did a tremendous amount of good. And so thank you so much for that. I know it's just all like, hey, I want this, I want that. Gimme, gimme, gimme. But really appreciate it. I understand what you're up against. We're up against the same similar struggles in Oberlin, of course, at a much smaller scale. But I hope that the committee can take those items into consideration. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay. I just have one quick question, and perhaps I had you down wrong. Would you consider yourself neutral or an opponent or a proponent on this bill?
Yeah, I felt kind of bad about that. I'm happy because it's something, and something is better than nothing. But is this the win we want? Do we want to put the state in these numbers, and what's a couple $1 million between friends? We're hearing them turn around, 45 million, 56 million. We're not really sure where it's going to fall. There's no way that you can have an exact number. But if we're going to take that hit anyway, do we want to have the benefit be immediate to people, be immediate to the people who really need it at that moment? And that's why you're sitting in those chairs and I'm standing at the mic. Those are your decisions to make.
Representative Clayton.
I just wanted to, as a representative from Overland Park, but someone who has family members who are buried in Oberlin. I've been to your town before. It's lovely. I enjoyed your testimony when you spoke before this committee a couple of years ago. I really appreciate you coming all of this way and offering your insight. And, you're just delightful. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. It's a lot of fun to get here. I'm glad there was a communication snafu and that I didn't come virtually. But I do hope that the committee realizes that this is something that's very important. Even with the communication breakdown, good news, I did get to go to Target last night, so I'm pretty happy about that. So that was good. But I know that you guys have been working hard. I don't want it to come across that I'm not appreciative or that Kansans wouldn't be appreciative. But I will tell you that for our businesses, that grocery store, if we lose that grocery store, we're in a really tough spot because it is a small community. Everybody knows everybody. I actually had an opportunity to visit with Chairman Smith's staff, and we talked about some of the fraud that the state is seeing with unemployment and everything. And they're like, well, how much have you guys paid on fraud? I'm like, we don't pay anything on fraud because we know everybody, so we know if they're working or not. So it's a little bit easy when we get a fraudulent claim, we actually know who it is, and so we can turn it in. So we get a break that way. But then as that applies to our grocery store, we do know everybody, and that grocery store takes really good care of citizens. They deliver food to the elderly who can't get out, whether it be COVID or weather or just their physical limitations. And so having those services for that store is really important. And so anything that we can do to make that business become that much more attractive to future investors is something very important to Oberlin. And thank you so much, Representative Clayton, for your kind comments. I appreciate it.
Committee, any further questions? We have a virtual question. Representative Day.
Hi, all. Can you hear me there okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ditto what Representative Clayton mentioned. I appreciate all of the testimony today. It's been really great to hear, and I can see the perspective from all sides on this. Just speaking from my perspective on your question about why we can't do this at the register, folks like me would not qualify for this. A lot of people that would not qualify for the refund, and for a good reason. But also, aside from that, I had a question that might be more for another time, but wanted to raise it here. Someone had mentioned that across the state, the food sales tax rate it varies from community to community. So I would just love to know more about that for future reference. But I think that's the reason why specifically we probably can't do it at the register as much as we'd love to. I would think. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right, and Representative Day, I think the reference to the variance in the food sales tax rate is just the variance in the sales tax rate, because you add on top of the state sales tax rate, you add in any local entities, sales tax, cities and counties, different districts there. Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, Haley, thank you for coming all this way, and thank you for your testimony.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much. Y'all have a great day. Thank you, seriously, for your service and all the work you're doing on this. I appreciate it.
Committee, that concludes the oral proponent testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to appear on behalf of House Bill 2091? Seeing none, we also have, I'll draw your attention to several written proponent testimonies that you should have received in your packet. I do not show any neutral or opponent testimony. Is there anyone wishing to appear neutral or in opposition to House Bill 2091? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on House Bill. Oh, Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we're about ready to close, but I just wanted to, if you don't mind, I have just a comment to make. If
certainly,
that's all right, Mr. Chairman. When I was a freshman in 2017, one of the first bills I introduced in this committee was to phase out the sales tax on food over a 5-year period. One of our colleagues gave me the nickname Glide Path to Zero Gartner because of that, and I still live with that today. I soon found out that that was not possible because we were in financial problems at that point in time. 1%, and we've heard Eddie give us the numbers, but I've always had the amount in my mind that by a previous researcher said it's about 60 million overall per 1% reduction of the sales tax on food. And so doing a little math, it doesn't take long to figure, to really make an impact. I believe you need to reduce it probably 3%. to get to 3.5, which is $180 million. So that's why I now have looked at a more targeted approach, which this would be, trying to help not everyone, but in the meantime, until we can start lowering the overall sales tax on food, I think this is a great approach to help those folks that are really struggling out there. And in this case, we would help projected 570,000 Kansans with this refund. So I'm not going to belabor the point. I still want to see sales tax on food come down, but I want to see a significant reduction. So in the meantime, I think this is a good approach. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Gardner. Is there anything else for the good of the committee? If not, the hearing is closed, and that concludes our business for the day. Thank you, everyone. There is no meeting tomorrow. Well, yeah, no meeting tomorrow. We are adjourned.